Welcome to the Midlife Pilot Podcast. We are glad you're with us. What is it like to become a pilot in your 40s and 50s? The challenges are unique for those of us in midlife, but so are the rewards. Hosts Ben, Brian, and Ted talk learning to fly, growing as pilots, and the joy of flying to destinations. The purpose of the podcast is not to teach, but to share knowledge and experiences of being a midlife pilot. Join the Midlife Pilot community and listen in every week. We are not CFIs or particularly intelligent, so if you want to learn how to fly, talk to anyone else other than the hosts of a podcast. Even this intro was too challenging for us, and we used a robot to do it. Okay, checklists are complete. Let's get the show started.
Hello, and welcome to episode 89 of the Midlife Pilot Podcast, where we talk all things flying and aviation in midlife. My name's Ben. I'm a commercial certificated pilot here in the Atlanta area, flying a Cessna 182. Tonight with us, we have my friend Brian, a private pilot in Nashville, which is the home of the Bachelorette Super Charlie. He flies a Cherokee 180 named Lucy. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. How are you doing?
I'm doing
You're on
very
the,
well,
you're on the
thank
wrong
you.
side. We got to move you over here. Hold on. Let's move you over here.
Oh,
okay. Now the world is correct. The audio audience will have no idea what we're talking about, but you know,
we're
for the
encouraging
video
them
audience,
to check us out while we live stream on YouTube.
And by the way, I'm impressed at how many people are starting to catch up really quickly to us doing this on Monday nights now live. So thank you for everybody for being in the chat. It's been we have to change things sometimes, and basically our lives revolve around Ben. So just whatever, and that's kind of what this episode topic is about too. So we'll get to that, right, Ben?
The quicker you come to that realization that the world revolves around me, the happier we'll all be. That's all I'm trying to say. Also joining us, my friend on the West Coast, Ted, a sport pilot in Portland, Oregon, flying the Flight Design CTLS. We like to call the Egg. How you doing, sir?
Hey, I'm doing well.
Awesome. Yeah. Awesome. We broadcast live on YouTube, usually every Monday night, and we have an awesome crowd. Getting to see Flying Stampede and our friend Flint, who I'm thinking maybe getting close to a check ride, maybe. Let us know in the comments, Flint. It's there for comments and questions throughout the podcast, but it is primarily an audio podcast. So we would really appreciate it if you would hit subscribe or follow, whichever podcast player you use. You can find podcast links, contact info, and become a Patreon supporter all at our website, midlifepilotpodcast.com. So, fellas, what have y'all been up to?
Well, I had a flat tire the other day. That was fun.
Wait a minute. In your MR2?
Yep, in the MR2. And,
And wait a minute, real quick, just for those that are wondering, an MR2 is not actually an airplane.
It should be. It's actually kind of designed in a way to be sort of like one. But
if it was an airplane, it's a pusher prop, though. Right?
That's true. Mid-engine is a pusher, right?
That's right.
Yeah. So, I just wanted to say that it's fantastic driving that car around town, especially. It's small. I can park anywhere. It's fast. It makes normal commuting type of driving or errand running a slight exercise, and I don't know, Fast and the Furious, sort of flirting with death at the same time. You're only going 30. It just sounds and feels like you're. So it's great. It's a lot of fun, except for when you get a flat tire. This is the first flat tire I've had in this car, and the spare tire is from 1985. So there was no way I was going to put it on a spare tire from 1985 and just get immediately another flat.
Right.
So instead of using the spare from 85, I had to bite the bullet and get it towed. Got it towed, and then it's really funny, by the way, to show up at any kind of a shop like that with that car, because most of the people that are working there are late teens, early 20s, mid 20s. And it's like I brought them something from outer space. They'll all stop what they're doing to come and look at this, ancient artifact. It is a trip. I had one of them call me afterward and said, I was trying to lock the doors And I just wanted to tell you, I don't know what's happening, but every time I lock it and shut it, it just unlocks. And you would think that I had brought out these sort of lost scrolls of magic when I just said, I said, look, man, all you got to do is just hold the handle up while you close the door if it's locked, and then it will remain locked. And he's on the phone with me. He's like, all right, let me try it. And he's like, whoa, he couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
And I just said, well,
Witchcraft.
Nobody was sober in the 80s. They had to put some things in place to keep us from locking our keys in our car.
That's right.
So,
That's right.
Anyway, so I did that. And, but I did a bunch of flying this weekend. I'll just say specifically yesterday, I went flying with my friend Autumn. It was a lot of fun. She's a student that had to kind of put off training for a little bit. You guys know her. But it's been a while since she even had been in a plane. Got her up. We went to Cape Girardeau. Had her hand fly, most of the cruise route, and she did great. It was really fun. Plus, I always just like to make the dad joke, even though I'm not a dad, that I have it on autopilot when. So, but anyway, but it was great. There were crazy clouds and all that. Ben, we were thinking about going to a place where maybe we could meet up, and then the weather was crazy, and then we thought about going to this other place, and the weather was crazy, and we ended up going west to Cape Girardeau. But it was definitely an exercise in cloud dancing and all kinds of fun things. But we had a great time, and I got to do a direct crosswind, 13 gusting 22.
Ooh.
And it was one of those where I was coming in the tower, basically kind of realized it set me up. It was intersecting runways at Cape Girardeau, and he said, I was about a 2 mile final, and he goes, and there's nobody else around. And he's like, if you don't have you don't have to do this. I just realized I put you over here. I basically just used it as an opportunity. I just said, hey, you know what? I said, I'll give it a shot, see how it goes. And if not, I'll circle around to runway 4 or whatever. And I didn't have any other traffic to worry about. His concentration was all on me. And I just took it as a perfect practice opportunity just to kind of do a pretty gusty crosswind landing, which it was fine. And it was great landing and everything was fine. But it was just interesting to have the controller on short front. I'm like, wait, sorry, I just asked you to do this, and just really zero reason for you to do this.
Yeah.
It's really cool to hear this story from you, because I'm thinking of the Brian Siskin I knew 2 years ago. You would have, and I'm applauding you for it. That's exactly what you should have done. You can always go around. Let's see how we handle crosswinds. So good for you, man. That's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, it was within my minimums as long as the gusts weren't on the high factor when I was on the, at the runway. It was fine, right. So. But thank you. I've grown up a little bit.
You had options as well, right? It's like, well, let's try this.
Yeah.
What else? May as well.
Yeah.
We have some feedback we want to get to tonight from our last episode about flying saunas, not flying saucers, flying in saunas, hot flying, heat. How do we want to do that?
The heat is on.
Yeah. The heat is on. That's what it was called. Thank you. I was looking for it. I'll take the first feedback from Bruce G, and then we have audio feedback, which we absolutely love to get. And we'll get to that after this. So from Bruce G, a 62-year-old new pilot. I just came across your podcast, and I'm listening to the one regarding flying in extreme heat. I just recently got my PPLH, yes, helicopter, in March, and I'm working on my commercial rating now. I recalled flying from Dallas to Seguin. I'm guessing on the pronunciation. Sorry if I butcher it. And it was 100 degrees. We had the doors on the helicopter, an R-22 with no air conditioning. And each time we landed and took off, I was filling up my sleeves, wiping salty sweat out of my eyes, just so I could get in the air. Anyway, he's sharing his experience with us. Anyway, that was a great podcast, and I enjoyed it. From Bruce G.
I never even thought about it from the helicopter perspective. That's a whole other thing.
Yeah. I mean, where would you put vents if you did have AC? I mean, in an R-20, I mean, I never even thought about that.
Yeah.
And you're low all the time.
Right.
I love having the doors. Wait, he said doors on though. Okay.
Yeah, he had the doors on.
I was thinking he said doors off because I was thinking, oh, that'd be so great. But no.
I guess that would probably help a lot. You probably get some of that residual downwash, but yeah, that's got to be tough.
How high can a R22 go?
So there's a YouTuber, Becky and Chris, and they actually flew their R22 or maybe the R44 from like Buffalo, New York to California for its overhaul.
Whew.
And I mean, I think they can go, and don't quote me on this, I quite often wrong these, but I thought it was like 10,000 feet was a ceiling, and they wouldn't, they weren't very, maybe it's a little bit higher than that, but they had to go through the specific pass in Arizona, New Mexico, because I think it was at 7,000 feet, and they were trying to stay, at 8,000 feet as a tops. So, but yeah, they don't go that high.
Yeah.
That's higher than what I would have even thought.
Yeah, it may not be that high. I'm just going from memory. So, and I don't want to remember what I had for dinner, and that was 2 hours ago.
Bruce said something though that I had thought about last week, which is that feeling of sweat on your eyes and then it burning in your eyes. If you work out outside very much and you've had that experience, just that like blinding yourself from sweat, it's such a feeling.
We were joking the other day that in Georgia and everywhere else where it's hot, that we feel like we need to be those boxers where we put Vaseline on our eyebrows and like create a little dam so that the sweat rolls out to the side. Oh, there we go. Nathan Ballard, service ceiling, 14,000 feet. Thank you, sir.
R22 goes 14,000. Wow. I don't know why I never put that together in my head. I just thought because you only see them low.
Well, I mean, you just got to think about how efficient the four wings are as they're rotating and how much lift they can generate. So,
yeah.
Jeez. So that was great feedback. Thanks for sending that in. We also got audio from Neil S., who is a member of our Discord server, and also he runs the Student Pilots Over 50 Facebook group.
Yeah.
He's the administrator.
Yeah.
And it's a great group to get involved with, and we appreciate his work on that. But Ted, do you have that audio ready to play?
Yeah, and I'll put a link to Student Pilots Over 50 in the show notes. And also, I bet they'll let you in if you're under 50, if you're still midlife. So, let me play that clip.
Hey guys, this is Neil Singh in Phoenix, Arizona, and I really enjoyed your episode on flying in hot conditions. I thought it was really cute when you guys were talking about what you considered to be hot. But seriously, it's out here in Arizona. In Phoenix, the high temperature during July reaches about 118 degrees. And so it is serious business. Our flight training continues. If you're a student pilot, you're doing all of that. Normal GA pilots out here, meaning pilots who don't have to fly for work, career, or being a student pilot, just don't fly in June, July, August. Those are our worst months. It's really bad. I did have to fly because I was doing a check ride, and I absolutely hated it for all the reasons that you guys have covered, just even more extreme versions of it though. The controlling engine temps at that time of year out here in Arizona, it's really difficult. And the main reason I hate flying in the heat here is actually just the engine temps. I'm used to the other stuff. I can walk around. I don't feel rushed during the pre-flights or anything like that. It's okay. The taxiing, obviously it sucks, but it's all doable. And when you get to altitude, like you guys were saying, it's really not that bad. But the main thing that you cannot control is that those engine temps they just look really bad. Anyway, that's just some of my commentary for you. I thought you made a lot of really good points. And obviously, if you're out here in the West, for anyone listening, if you decide to fly out here in the West, you need to be really well educated on density altitude. Here in Phoenix, field elevation is about 1,500 feet. In July, that means density altitude of about 5,000 feet. And I had my check ride up in Prescott, Arizona. In July, 5,000 feet field elevation and density altitude was about 9,000 feet. Just be careful if you come out west, and great show. See ya.
At 9,000 feet. That's wild.
It's something everybody should experience. I tell you what, you ever just had like a fever and then done something? I don't know. Maybe you drove to the pharmacy or something or whatever, and just the way you're perceiving reality is just on a different. Things seem faster and weird, and like you're in a dream. That's kind of what I think once you get into that upper level of density altitude, that's kind of what it seems like. The ground is going by so fast. It's weird. But that's such a great feedback. I love the idea where it's like, we were talking about all these kind of crafty things you could do. And then he chimes in and says, also don't fly for these 3 months of the year.
Yeah.
And I liked, yes, it's brutal here. It's 97 degrees with the feels like temperature of 100. And he's out there 118 at actual temperatures. Yeah, that seems to be pretty crazy.
Next level.
Which is why I don't live in Arizona.
Put it this way. Digging into my past experience in motorcycles. Once you get over 100 degrees, you want to put a jacket on and zip up all the vents and everything else, because that air hitting you is going to overheat your body. You're so used to, let me take everything off. Let me get the air. But that air is actually making it worse. And so the same sort of thing, right? It's like, we're talking about 100, it being bad. He's like, yeah, try 118. Like,
well, the heat must be really bad in Arizona though, because they pronounce words like Prescott,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Like it's clearly affecting them, on a cognitive level that is probably hard for most of us to understand.
Yeah.
Look, I'm gonna defend our listener. We love all of our listeners, including those that are in Arizona. So.
Hey, look, we flew by yesterday. We flew by Cairo, Cairo, Cairo.
Oh wow!
So we have a Cairo in Georgia.
Oh yeah,
spelled exactly the same way.
Cairo.
It's not Cairo.
Nope.
It's Cairo.
Were you in Missouri, Brian?
Just down from
Okay.
Or all around there, and then Lafayette. It's not Lafayette. Anyway,
wow.
So all right, what's next, Ben?
So I wanted to, something happened today, not bad, but I had an experience and it was through mentors that I kind of knew what to do. And it's, that bag of experiences is starting to fill up, but I use my plane to get to places for business. I have to be in Thomasville, Georgia tomorrow. And last week, I made a hotel reservation, and then I rented a car because I was going to need it for 24 hours. And pro tip, Emerald Club members, which is national and enterprise, I'm not sponsored by them. But if you join, they have an FBO desk. So you can call up this 800 number, and you just give them your tel number, and they'll make all the arrangements for you. So I got a call from them saying, hey, we want to confirm that you're going to pick your car up tomorrow morning. And I said, yeah, I'm going to be there tomorrow morning. And I said, let me check the NOTAMs. Both runways in Thomasville, that's Tango Victor India, are closed tomorrow and only tomorrow. And my first meeting is at 10 a.m. So I'm like, okay, note to self, continue to check NOTAMs and maybe check them a little earlier, but I don't know when this NOTAM was posted, so it may not have mattered. I probably did check it a week ago. But I was able to reschedule a rental car. I'm going to a different airport that's 30 minutes away. It worked out. But one of my flying mentors, when we're working on logistics, especially for business meetings, you need to, you can cancel meetings. It's not the end of the world, but it doesn't really look good. It's not a good look on you. He's like, you need to make sure that you have a 2-hour window for any reason. And because of that, I was able to find an airport that had a rental car agency at there that I can drive, and it's about a 30-minute drive. But, it's having somebody, I might have given myself 30 minutes. buffer time had I not had somebody to talk to. Because 30 minutes, the town, you can go all the way across the county in 30 minutes. It's not, but it's these type of things that will come up and surprise you. And also another reason why you check the NOTAMs at least 24 hours in advance, because that would have been trying to work this out tomorrow morning at 6:00 would have been impossible. So that was kind of my little story, and what I thought we could segue into tips and tricks that mentors are going to be there for you, that you don't know what questions to ask until it's confronted you. And I think it's people that I'm able to call that say, hey, what do you do in this situation? Any thoughts, any tips?
Yeah.
What do y'all think?
I can remember Chris C. Talking to us about where do you park when you go to a different airport, and how do you call ahead, and asking all those first, those first student cross country questions where you're actually stopping the plane and getting out of the plane, that first experience. And I think that those are great examples of where a mentor is helpful, right? This isn't something that you're going to learn from the PHAC. These are the things you learn about your day-to-day flying.
Go ahead, Brian.
I was just going to say, I think also there's something to be said for kind of triangulation of points of view, in the sense that you when you're coming up, you're pretty much being cultivated by your instructor. And so you've just been looking to your instructor to get, they are the source of knowledge. And what you find pretty quickly into this is that there's a lot of reliance on the instructor to be the source of knowledge. And I think that pretty quickly you've got to get to a place where you have other places to go to look for information, to compare, contrast, or to ask things that you kind of don't want to bug your instructor about, because you've bugged them about every other thing under the sun, the whole time. So, for me, that person was probably Ben. I think you were probably one of the first real mentors that I sort of latched onto, because I just felt like you had enough experience to guide me, but enough pragmatic point of view that it wasn't going to be kind of the instructor line on everything. It's more like, here's the real world. And also it was coming from a place of fostering self-reliance in me. It wasn't you just telling me what you know, and then so therefore I know it.
I agree. And I think weather plays a big part in the early days of mentoring. Obviously, I was fortunate in that the person that I share my airplane with has 20,000 hours, and was a great source he was a good source, but 90% of his knowledge is airline flying. And we joke about it, and he would say very jokingly, not in all actuality, because we'd gotten feedback this, but his co-pilot would say, what's the weather today? And he would say, doesn't matter, we're going. Now, that's being a little facetious, but, it didn't matter a lot to what they were doing, because they're flying at 35,000 feet and they're both above most of the weather. So I did have other mentors. My buddy down in Tifton, I would ask him, today I flew through a yellow area on my iPad and it didn't seem so bad. Is that something you normally do? Or, I bounce things like that. I'm like, he goes, totally. He goes, stay out of the orange and the red. You'll be fine.
Yeah.
So it's those little kind of growing things that I found very, very helpful.
I want to say too, Ben, that I had an experience yesterday that I failed to mention, that you were kind of a voice in my head as I was going through the decision of what I was going to do. We were coming into John Tune, and there was just a light to moderate precipitation cell, pretty much, sort of like around the runway. It decided to only rain exactly on the airport and like about a half a mile around it.
Yeah.
And if you're looking at ADSB and you're looking at these things, it looks a lot more harrowing than it actually is, and you're sort of training yourself to take that stuff with a grain of salt. It's delayed weather information. Look outside; it's right there. Just and
Right.
And so we were doing that, and we were coming in, and I really was thinking about, because it looked pretty heavy, and I really thought to myself, should I just turn away and just give this a few minutes and then come right back? No harm, no foul. And then I'd just be able to come right in. But part of me kind of wanted the challenge of it. And part of the reason why I have the confidence to do those kinds of experiments is because, I have an out, and you've preached that all the while. And then basically I leveraged air traffic control. They were giving ride reports for, the Pilatus that was in front of me, and then the Cherokee that was in front of him. They were passing along ride reports, and, what is it like on short final kind of thing. And it was fine. It wasn't that bad. And so we came in, and it rained just a little bit on, it was not too bad. And then the runway was wet. It was nothing, it ended up being a big ball of nothing. But looking at it from 4 miles out with the time frame that you have, I just slowed everything down, leveraged ATC, took another look at what was going on, and just thought, I don't have to do this, but you don't have to stop. You don't have to freak out and just start running the other way. You can just you can own the space you're in and take your time and let things develop. And as long as you have an out, which for me was just go anywhere else than the thing I'm headed at, then, it's a perfect opportunity. So you're sort of, the spirit of your guidance was in my head in that moment. Whereas, if it was, a year into this or 6 months into this or 30 hours after PPL, I would have just been like, I'm out.
Right.
Which is fine too. You should.
100%.
It's like, it's levels. Yeah.
It's it's weird those first times where you're warned about something by a controller and you say, yeah, I'm good. Like that seems so weird. It seems like saying unable, right? It's okay. You're reporting a mild to moderate cell. I'm looking at it and I'm choosing to go through it, not around it. Like that seems really weird. So I'm not saying that's always the thing to do, right? I'm just saying, as you get experience and you start to make that decision, and
it's funny. We'll get to geeks coming here in a second, but early in my flying journey, I would hear those 42911. There's an area of moderate precipitation to your north. It's 5 miles in diameter, and it's just one of these little tiny cells. And back then, I was like, "Oh my God! Well, let me start finding some waypoints that's going to get me 30 miles away around this." But I mean, that was going through my head. Like they're warning me about this weather, and I should be. But then, of course, experience.
Yeah, they're like 42911. Can you explain why you are not panicking?
Exactly.
Well, I want to grab some comments here. Planes, Places, and Adventures said something that I think is really true when we're talking about the difference between a CFI and a mentor. Said many instructors, no matter how good at primary instruction, haven't themselves experienced IRL flying, in real life flying.
So true.
There is something weird when you realize, oh, I probably have more hours than most of the instructors that I'm around now. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying that I'm a better pilot than that. I'm saying that the number is larger, and that is definitely strange. Realizing like, oh, you've traveled to Marfa, Texas. I bet your instructor, or that you've got some young instructors that haven't left town.
Yeah, it's kind of like how it was when you graduate from high school, and some people go right to college and get their degree, and then some of us others, not quite as linear, did a little college, maybe get kicked out of some colleges, maybe get some jobs, maybe lose some jobs, whatever it is. But then you kind of meet them all back in the hometown, and you realize, you're there, you see them at Thanksgiving or whatever it is. And you're like, wow, like I've seen some stuff, man. I've been out there, and they still have just been kind of cooped up in their traditional track, which, they're still accomplishing things. They've seen things, they've encountered some things, but they haven't been like, stranded,
Right.
I don't know, whatever. They haven't been through the weirdness that is just being out there. So that's a great comment.
Let me pick Mark, Mr. Geek's comment next.
And I wanted to touch on this. So One Dog Geek says, for me, I was, and for the most part still am, extremely cautious. I learned a lot from Ben when he listened to me fret about a flight I wanted to make. And he just said, dude, you got this. And so far we've talked about finding a mentor and using that mentor. And I feel pretty doggone humble and kind of, you know how I am.
This is the Ben
to have
show.
people
I love
be me being mentors to them. And the aspect that I wanted to bring up as a result of that comment is I am super conscious about the advice that I give. As we say on this podcast over and over again, we are not instructors. We do not take us for instruction. We're sharing our experiences. The flight that Mark wanted to take, there was some trepidation over flying over mountains. And the comment was I purposely led the conversation. I said, well, Mark, I guess just you'll fly your plane to the beach and back every time. Because outside of that, for where you live, you're going to have to cross the mountains at some point in time. And it was kind of my way of saying, dude, you got this. But I also am very conscious of the fact that Mark flies over the mountains and loses an engine, and God forbid what happens after that. And so I don't want to push somebody so far that it's borderline dangerous. Brian was doing his first long trip, I remember, and you were down in Shreveport. And we were going over the weather together.
That was 2 years ago today, by the way.
Oh, wow.
Okay, how funny is that?
Yeah.
That's how apropos. I remember saying, if it were me, if I'm in your shoes, this is, with the experience that I currently have now, this is how I'm going to approach this flight. I don't want to say, man, just go up there and send it and see what happens. Or I don't want to say, don't worry about the airplane rental being back. It's too, I would rather try to lead you to the decision you're most comfortable with. And that doesn't always mean not flying.
Yeah.
It's wild how much external pressure that put on me in that situation to have the owner of the aircraft kind of, just sort of upset that I was getting stuck, as opposed to being 1000% supportive of my safety. It was sort of, I will accept that as a top level thing, but with this kind of undercurrent or tonality of, I guess, but if I'm going to have to come, but if I'm going to have to come get the plane, you're going to have to buy the ticket and all this stuff. And it was just sort of like, man, I'm not in Vietnam or something, like settle down. Like I'm in Shreveport. It's not crazy far. We'll figure it out, whatever. But that was a huge factor, which, by the way, anybody who's renting planes and like club planes or things like that to where you can start to get out there, side word of advice, have those conversations with the club. I don't care what's in writing. Have conversations with people and say, if I go on this trip and something happens to where I get stuck, whether mechanical, whatever it is, I'm sick. If I get sick, right? I get food poisoning. I don't know, whatever. What is the protocol for that? What is the expectation? Because I don't want to have any external pressures of, I got to get this plane back. You don't want to compromise your safety. Get their itis is bad enough. Get their back-itis is bad enough. You don't need the guilt of having the club plane and pushing other people's trips back, or what. You can't take on that pressure, and nobody else should in front of you either. So anyway, I mean, that situation, you were very helpful to me, and you knew where I was, and you gave me the tools to make a decision that I felt good about, but you just gave me different ways to kind of to look at the situation, but at the same time, never made me feel like, I don't know, like I gave up because I got a hotel for a couple nights, to sort of let this thing kind of settle. And I ended up leaving in a sort of marginal situation that was right at the edge of what I would have been comfortable with at that point. And I did it. And then it gave me a massive amount of confidence, because all I did was study the weather for 2 days while I was stuck in Shreveport. And then, you have to decide to leave at a certain point, and it's not totally there yet, but when things are trending the right way, and you get out there. I hadn't done scud running. I hadn't done things like that. So you gave me some rails to sort of work with them and the confidence to do so. And I think that anybody that's looking for a mentor, it should be people like that. I think there's also, and I don't want to be totally focused on just Ben, although we could have just the Ben hour, but
I prefer not.
I think that also another side of mentorship that we haven't talked about is not even necessarily about the people you call when you're in a jam flying, or you want somebody to look at your flight plan or those kind of things. But I really think that you should, as much as you need a Ben, the sage, as we call him, or I called him, and then now people call him. That was how he got the sage name, was because he was the sage for me in that time period. You also need a similar person that is on the mechanic side.
Yeah.
And you need to have somebody in your situation that is not a mechanic that you trust, a person that it's a mechanic, but maybe not even necessarily your mechanic.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they can be, but it's more like people that are not in a position to make financial driven. People aren't trying to make money off you, right? Independently wise mechanics, and so I've had a couple of those. There was the professor that we met when you saved me in Ocracoke, and flew him down, and I still have his information. I gave to his mechanic school, a big Amazon gift card to thank you. He went out of his way. But anyway, that was another early on thing where I knew that I needed somebody like you, Ben, that had the flying part of it. But I also wanted to have somebody that's on the mechanics side of it. And I still have that now with even the mechanic that we have for our plane now. He's somebody that doesn't work on a bunch of planes anymore. He's still, he really is in a mentor position with us. And it's the most invaluable thing on the other side of the flying part.
Right. I agree with that. One thing that I wanted to bring up that I've found that I've been a benefactor of this experience, and what I try to emulate when you're looking for a mentor, find somebody who's going to ask you questions instead of tell you what to do. Find somebody that's not trying to, as you said earlier, they're not there to teach you, but just kind of, this is how I did it. What do you think?
And Ben, what do you mean by that?
Effect. So what I mean is, no, in the same, maybe a little less so on the mechanic side, you need information. Is this important? Should I do a reman? Should a remanufactured engine? Should I do a rebuild? Should I do a brand new? There, you can ask 100 people, you get 100 opinions, but you need to find somebody that you have a good confidence in. The one other thing I was going to mention is I have another friend that's parked a couple of planes down from me. He's a CFI, and he's a really nice guy. And I'm not going to mention any names, but he's kind of a one-upper, meaning whatever story you tell, he's got one better.
Yeah.
And I think if I drill down far enough with him, I'll get some good advice, but I don't have the patience to sit there and listen to how incredible stories that he has. That's, I just don't suffer that very well. So I've elected I call him from time to time and we chat, but I don't consider him a mentor.
I know someone who's like that, but even more so. Sorry. But it makes me think some of this is knowing your mentors or the people you talk to may not be exactly you, right? They may not be you with slightly more experience. And sometimes part of that is getting a filter from that, right?
That's right.
I may ask 3 people and get 3 different opinions, and that will help inform me. And asking the questions, like you said, is a good example of that, of probing you for that. But oftentimes people just tell you what they would do, and they just assume you're just like them. And that there's still value in that, right? You'll talk to that person if you need to.
Right.
You'd rather have somebody else to talk to, but it's still valuable, right?
I absolutely agree with that. Our CFI, wait a minute, let me restate that. Our master CFI friend, CFII friend, Nathan Ballard.
Can we call him Sensei CFI?
I like it.
I think I like that. Sensei. Is in our chat and he says, I have on my personal minimums list, if there is any doubt at all, I call a mentor. They usually just let me talk and I come to the conclusion I shouldn't go. They just let me work through it. And I absolutely love this feedback. So I've gotten some advice in my professional career that I apply pretty much in every aspect of my livelihood, including my aviation livelihood. And the piece of advice that I received was never miss an opportunity to shut the heck up. They used a different adjective, but it's let people talk. And I try to do that. And, 9 times out of 10, I'm going to agree with you. And I'm going to say, I guess you've figured this one out on your own. That's great feedback, Nathan. And thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
I also think that there's something about, I think that no matter, you are going to realize soon that you are also becoming a mentor. It's not a fixed place thing where Ben was born a mentor and then has just been in this mentor position, shoveling coal at the mentor mine or whatever.
If you ask my wife, Terry, she's like, you're using him as a mentor? Are you sure about that?
It's very selective. But yeah, so I think also I have found myself in a position where I'm passing on things that I've learned from others. And this is what aviation is all about, right? Just all the pedagogy and the commitment to pedagogy in aviation, I think is one of the most intrinsically fascinating things about it, because each generation is picking up all of these pieces. So it all starts when you go back and you look at something like Stick and Rudder and you're reading this and you're like, okay, so these people, they figured out all this stuff. And then how does it generationally survive, And this is how. This is the nature of knowledge and passing things on. So each generation has a period of time of, learning from the masters and taking codified knowledge, but then having their own kind of clumsy experience with it until they kind of get some sort of relationship with that knowledge, and then they can start to build on it, and then they pass it on to others. And I just think it's a fascinating thing, but I find myself sort of, I don't know, it feels like a little bit of an imposter syndrome sometimes, but I know where to speak and where to not, or where to, sometimes being a mentor is just saying, here's the person you should go talk to, or
100% agree with that.
Think about it perhaps in this other way. It's not even about like answers and such direct sourcing of information or go, no go decision or whatever. And then there's also sometimes where you feel like you've got to say something. Yeah. And that's a whole other twist, right? Like when it's like, I don't feel like I'm totally in the position to say that I know better, but I'm very confident that I know better than what is going on here, especially when it comes to safety or decision-making or things. And putting yourself in that position to be uncomfortable is not easy, but that's all part of it as well. And you have to have, a healthy relationship with those things, and you got to receive criticism and be able to give criticism in a healthy way and hope that shakes out. It's not all just cozy conversations where, you call Ben and he goes, well, let me guide you to the correct answer. It's
let me pull my mentorship book out, manual, and refer to it. No, and again, I'm flattered that people think enough of me to reach out to a plug.
We'll put your phone number in the show notes.
That's right. 24/7. Just call me whenever. For those Patreon members that get access to our Discord server, it's been a great sounding board for people doing go, no-go decisions, people working on their private pilot training, asking questions that aren't to their instructor, instrument, all of that. It's one of my favorite things about our community is our Discord server. It's a safe space. We don't tolerate people who are talking above their capabilities. And those folks are pretty easy to spot. Mm-hmm. So it's a pretty incredible community, and really, really proud to be a part of it.
And it's very humble. I think that there's a lot of humility and a lot of deference to all levels of experience in a way that I think is the most healthy for how knowledge gets shared and exchanged and moved forward.
Yeah, there's a what Ben's talking about is the channel is called Go No Go Review, and it's actually one relatively recent for our Discord community that we created, because we realized that people were having that discussion. We didn't have a place for it, and so what gets posted in there are, I'm thinking about this trip. Here are my concerns about it.
Yeah,
I'm doing my first 4-day trip, and I'm going to be 500 miles from home, and there may be weather. What do I do? And it's a great way. I think that half of it is writing that out and communicating it is what starts that process. And of course, nobody says, yeah, do it. No, don't do it. Right. It's asking the questions. And so it's a great one, especially for introverts that would rather do that.
Yeah. The flip side of it too, also, Ted, is that the community is very positive and very supportive universally. When people, we celebrate no-go decisions as if they are getting a rating. It's the same way that, every go around should be cheered and celebrated. Every no-go should be cheered and celebrated. We really do everything we can to, because there's so many of those no-go decisions where you make the no-go decision, you disappoint your friends or your family, you're concerned about the weather, then the weather does exactly the opposite, and then you're sitting there, in that position where you just, ruined the whole weekend for everybody for no reason, but you did it for a reason, and you made the call because you have to make a call. And if your friends and your family are going to be upset with you, because there's no saving you from that. That's just going to be what happens.
Yeah.
But in this community, you are going to have nothing but a bunch of people high-fiving you for making that decision and just living to do it another day and taking care of your family in the best way you know how. So all good.
Our attitude is it's better to be celebrated for disappointing people than being celebrated for killing people.
Yeah. T-shirt idea. Wait, no.
Wow. Yeah. We can wordsmith that one. We can workshop a little bit and see what we come up with.
Maybe just a little bit. Yeah.
Pilots against imminent death.
Paid?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's getting back to it. I would just be strongly encourage that if you've got the experience to help others, but also help them find their own way. And, being a mentee is pretty easy. Being the mentor is, I think, kind of a little bit more difficult and challenging. And we have to be careful. And it, when I was talking to you about your weather and when I was talking to One Dull Geek about his crossing the mountains, all I can think of is, I'm going to give these guys advice, and they're going to go listen to my advice, and they're going to go get themselves killed, and it's going to be their blood's going to be on my hands. So I'm very conscious of that, and I think we all have to be conscious of the advice that we give. Yeah, go ahead and do a loop in your 182. That I'm sure it'll be fine. I mean, stuff like that is pretty obvious, but there's sometimes that have a lot more nuance to it.
Yeah.
One Dull Geek is saying here, we even have a member we can make fun of for making no-go decisions, #dammit.
Yes.
So that's an inside joke because One Dull Geek was recording at the moment that he realized his plane was filling up with fuel on the inside.
Yes.
And in the moment that he realized not only that he was having this problem, but also that he was going to have to not attend the fly-in that we were all attending, he let out a sort of excruciating, damn it, that we happen to have a recording of, and that maybe we kind of put it on a soundboard, and maybe we come around from time to time and use it, and it's become kind of a thing. But we're so grateful for that.
For somebody who doesn't cuss a lot, is what actually
that's really what it was.
To that, yeah.
Well, as Biff says, make fun of or celebrate. It's such a fine line, but to me, that is also part of the mentorship thing. Is at least what I tend to do is try to talk about my own failures, right? Like, because I know I'm dumb, and let me explain to you how I'm dumb. Maybe that'll keep you from being dumb in the same way, right? Or that we're not perfect, and so that's one way of doing it, and bringing up "damn it" again, because Mark lets us keep doing it. It's a great way to talk about that, rather than Mark didn't get to go to this. He could have just gone anyway. It would have been fine. So what if there's a gallon of fuel sloshing around? No, it's a lot easier to talk about it in those terms, I guess.
Absolutely.
What would Lloyd Dobler do?
Wow.
Very good. Anything else that we'd like to add to this topic, gentlemen?
I think we're good. What do we got next here?
We've got some Patreons to thank.
Yeah.
We've gotten a very nice group joining us on Patreon this week and over the last week.
Yeah.
Either one of you want to cover our Patreon members?
I can do it.
Or Brian, go ahead.
Waiting for the volunteering there. Yes.
Oh yeah. All right. So as you guys know, we have 4 tiers to our Patreon member, whatever hierarchy or whatever you want to call it. What is it? Pyramid scheme?
Yes.
Is that right?
Not funny.
So we have 4 levels. The lowest level, not the worst, just the lowest, is the Landomatic. Then it goes up to Hershey Bar, then Beast Toolkit, and then Caps Available. So this week we got people coming in mostly just at Hershey Bar, which is really cool to have patrons at the Hershey Bar level. That's kind of the sweet spot, no pun intended. Matt W, thank you. Corey M, thank you very much. Scott W, Matt W, and Gordon J.
That Matt W guys may be in there twice, and I apologize for that.
Matt W and Matt W?
Yes. But I will say I'm curious, and send us feedback. Scott W and Matt W have the same last name. Oh. I'm wondering if there's a relation there.
Okay. Well, this has just gone completely sideways.
Yeah.
So I guess we should just start making these up because the real life is too weird.
Yes.
So, all right. And then at the Beast Toolkit level, we have Andy C. Thank you very much for being at the level that is named after Ben's plane. And then at the top level, Caps Available. When is Caps Available? 400 feet or what is it?
I thought it was 600.
600
may vary on the planes. Yeah.
Do we have any? There we go. S. Ward is in the house.
Yeah.
No relationship.
But anyway, let me just say, Shannon D.
Yes.
Caps Available supporter, massive. Thank you so much. And that gets you into some insider chat pieces where you're actually able to, kind of directly affect. Or at least help steer us in the right direction for maybe some of the topics that we would like to cover. And you get to have a little bit of a voice as a podcast insider at the Caps Available level. So thank you for that. I'm sorry, Ben, what were you saying?
No, that's it. Thank you guys very much. Scott W is in the chat, and he's confirmed that he is not related to Matt W. So, but we're glad you joined us in the chat. We got a good group in there tonight.
Yeah. A couple of things for you. The first is I kind of rolled back a little bit to see what we'd been talking about in that Insiders channel, and one of the things was some extended clips that didn't make it to the show that I put up, And it was kind of fun because nobody knew for sure if where those came from, or if they were if this recording that was made, if they had permission for that to be shared. So it's a great spot to make fun of people in. We also had a strange long conversation about the location of vents on Cessnas and Pipers. So that was kind of a strange one.
Oh, so it was a heat discussion. And
it was a heat
discussion. The beauty of the vents and Cessnas is it'll cool your iPad for you.
Yeah.
As opposed to the Pipers where they're down by your ankles and you have nice, cool ankles.
Oh, but they can just open their doors for the air.
One of the most stressful moments of my private pilot training was the first practice check ride session with my instructor where I was doing the cross country. And I was so worried about starting the clock, all the things we talked about, right? And you got your hand drawn, everything. And I had done I was going crazy, right? It's like the win cards. And to me, that was the most stressful thing possible, was that part of it, for me at least, just because it was very, I don't know, just seemed like a lot of stuff to do and keep track of, which is good stuff, but I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I had done it the previous time I'd flown my instructor. I blew everything so badly that it was kind of like a wash, right? Just, all right, man, like we'll try this again next time. We'll get some of these things better organized. I think you should have this and that and whatever. So then when we go up in the next time in a 172, which of course is what I was training in, I had taken so much time to carefully handwrite all of these things. I had all laid out. I mean, I had everything perfect, infallible. We take off. I get into VY. It had rained the night before. The vents are open. Water comes flying out of the vents down like a waterfall. I mean, I looked like a wet rat. All of my papers were just coming apart. Like it was, I basically got rained on inside the plane. And I just looked at my instructor and he was just laughing. It was like,
yeah.
So I had to basically not do it again because of those vents. So, there's things.
Ted, I think Brian has a little PTSD from Cessna vents.
Yeah, I think so.
It was the worst. And also bees like to hang out in those things and come through.
I haven't that much, but that's neither here nor there. That's a discussion for another day.
All right.
I do want to end tonight's podcast. Our friend Peter T, I like his comment here at the end about mentors. Just a thought. Mentors come in all shapes and sizes, young or old, simple or complex, or jet pilot. Well said, sir. Well done. We appreciate the participation.
Hey, before we forget, I do want to put a link down in the show notes that will be a video that I'm sure I'm probably the only one that has seen. There's a channel called Easy Flight, and it's like powered parachutes and all that kind of like ultralight type stuff. They did a video recently about what's the difference between a flight instructor and a coach. And it's the same discussion that we're having, right? You can learn from people who aren't a flight instructor and they have different goals. So I'm going to put a link to that. The whole video you're seeing, like a powered parachute trike thing, you can just ignore what you're seeing and just listen to it. It's a good video about that. So anyway, wanted to say that.
Thanks for letting us. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Check that out in the show notes. So that'll be a wrap for tonight. We appreciate everybody in the chat and listening and being part of our community. We and the rest of the community are your pilot friends. So join us on Patreon, send us a PayPal drop, or contact us at midlifepilotpodcast.com. Next week, it's the end of the month, and we've decided we're just going to do information whiskey episodes, the booze news, whatever you want to call it, just a general chat session. Until then, it's a wrap for episode 89 of the Midlife Pilot Podcast. We look forward to hanging out with you guys next week. Y'all take care.